They found him face down on the dock at Port Caravel, fingers still curled around a coin so old it had no face, just a skull pressed into the gold. The surgeon said he'd been dead 3 days. The harbour master said he'd watched him walk in that very morning. A pirate, a legend, a man who'd sailed through hurricanes and laughed, and here he was, terrified, clutching a single coin as if it had chased him across the Atlantic. His last words, scratched into the dock with a broken nail: "Do not spend it, do not give it, do not keep it." The coin vanished from evidence before noon. 3 men fought over it. 1 went blind, 1 jumped from the lighthouse, and the 3rd sailed west, chasing something only he could see. This is the story of the treasure that made pirates afraid of their own greed. Captain Maren Voss had a policy about cursed gold. She didn't believe in it. She believed in rum, in wind, and in the fact that most people were too stupid to hold on to either. She'd taken 3 ships in the last month, never fired a cannon, just smiled, talked, and walked away with the cargo. Her first mate, Drum, called her the most dangerous liar on the Caribbean. She called it negotiating with style. But when the blind man stumbled into her tavern at Scarlet Cay with half a map burned into his palm, she stopped smiling. The map led to something called the Oro Maldito, the damned gold. A hoard so vast, so cursed, that the pirate who found it a century ago had buried it himself and prayed no one would dig it up. Maren ordered 2 more rums. Then she stole the blind man's map. Then she felt, for the first time in years, genuinely afraid. Drum had been with Maren for 7 years. He knew her tells. The way she tapped her ring finger when she was lying. The way she never blinked when she was serious. He also knew she was hiding something the moment she folded that map and slid it into her boot. He didn't ask. That was the arrangement. She made the impossible seem effortless. He made sure she survived it. But tonight, he pulled her aside in the alley behind the tavern and said 3 words she'd never heard from him. "Maren, tell me." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she unfolded the map. The burn pattern wasn't random. It was a constellation. Stars rearranged into a root. And in the center, instead of an X, there was a drawing so small you had to squint. A lantern. Not a cross, not a skull. A lantern. Light guides it, the blind man had said. Drum looked at the lantern on the map, then at the lantern hanging above the alley. It had gone out, in still air, with no wind. Finding a navigator who wouldn't ask questions was harder than finding the treasure itself, which is why Maren ended up at Isola's door at 3 in the morning, because Isola never asked questions. She only answered ones no one had thought to ask yet. Isola Vane was 61 years old, barely 5 feet tall, and had navigated 12 ships through the Devil's Jaw reef system without losing a single hull. She kept a talking parrot named Theorem, who had, on 3 recorded occasions, predicted storms 48 hours before they appeared. Maren showed her the constellation map. Isola didn't blink. She just walked to her window, looked at the sky, and said, "I know this route." Sailed it once, never spoke of it. She turned around. Her face was the color of old ash. "The Oro Maldito is real. I've seen the fog where it hides. The sea changes there. It remembers." Pause. She agreed to navigate, but only if they promised to leave it all behind if the fog rose before they reached the island. There is a particular type of pirate who makes other pirates uncomfortable. Not because he's violent, though he was. Not because he's unpredictable, though he was that too. But because he always seems to know exactly what you're about to do before you do it. Salvatore Caine appeared on Maren's dock at dawn, uninvited, impeccably dressed in black silk, with the kind of smile that made you check your pockets. He'd heard about the map. Of course he had. Caine always heard things.
He claimed to have additional pieces, the other half of the burned palm map, lost when the blind man and he had parted ways. Parted ways, right. The blind man had the missing fingers on his left hand to remember that parting. Soft and menacing, Maren needed his fragment. He knew it, she knew it, so she did what she always did with dangerous things. She smiled, offered him a place on the crew, and started planning how to get rid of him before they reached the island. Caine, for his part, was planning the exact same thing about her. Dramatic pause. The ship launched at midday, and the sea watched.
The storm came from the south on the third night, and Isola said it was wrong. Not wrong as in dangerous, wrong as in intentional. Storms don't have shapes, everyone knows that. But this one, seen from above the mainmast, lightning tracing its outline, moved like a hand, like something enormous dragging a fist across the water toward them. Drum lashed the wheel. Isola made calculations no one else understood, muttering star names in a language Maren had never heard. The crew hung onto ropes and prayed. Caine stood at the bow, not holding anything, just watching it come. And then he reached into his coat and held up a coin, not their coin, and the storm hesitated, just for a moment, just long enough for them to cut south and clear the edge of it. When Drum asked what he'd done, Caine smiled and said, "The gold knows its own." Alarmed, he already had a coin from the hoard, and it had recognized the storm. What is this treasure, and what does it want?
Below deck, while the crew slept off the storm, Maren found Isola sitting alone with her charts and the parrot Theorem, who had not spoken a word since the storm began. Maren asked her, "What is the Oro Maldito really? Not legend, not rumor, really?" Isola was quiet for a long time. Then, "It's not cursed because someone cursed it. It's cursed because of what it is. It was melted from idols, 100 gods, maybe more, all broken down into coin and bar. The treasure doesn't punish greed, it punishes the claim. The moment you decide it's yours, the moment you think of it as possession, it becomes something else, a weight, and you feel it everywhere you go." Maren thought of the blind man, the man who jumped from the lighthouse, the man who sailed west. All of them had touched it, kept it. "And Caine?" she asked. Isola looked at the compass on the table. Its needle was spinning, not pointing anywhere, everywhere at once. Caine has been claimed. Commander Elara Fenn had been following Maren Voss for 14 months, not because she was a pirate, there were plenty of those, but because Maren was the most resourceful one, and resourceful pirates led interesting places. Today, interesting meant 2 Navy frigates running parallel course 3 miles off their stern. Drum spotted them at first light and said nothing to the crew, only to Maren, in a voice so flat she knew it was bad. She knows where we're going. She doesn't know why. She will. No time for argument. Caine appeared on deck, looked at the frigates without surprise, and said, "We need to go faster." He didn't explain how he knew about the ships. He didn't explain how he knew about the route they'd take. He just walked to the helm and adjusted their heading by 2 degrees west, and Isola, watching from the foredeck, felt her blood go cold, because 2 degrees west put them directly into the coral maze, a ship's graveyard, a route no sane captain had sailed in 50 years. "The frigates won't follow us in there," Caine said. He was absolutely right. Neither would anyone else. The coral maze was not a graveyard. It was a museum. 47 ships, Drum counted the masts above the waterline, standing upright in the shallows like a frozen fleet waiting for orders. Some still had sails, some still had flags. One had a lantern burning. A lantern, 40 years abandoned, still burning. Maren ordered them to stay quiet and stay centered. No one breathed too loud. The coral grew over the hulls of the dead ships in shapes that almost looked like hands, reaching, holding. Then Theorem spoke for the first time since the storm. The parrot, Isola's parrot opened its beak and said, in a voice that was not a parrot's voice, "4 of you will reach the gold, 3 of you will leave, 1 will stay." Isola covered his cage. The crew pretended they hadn't heard, but everyone had heard, and everyone spent the rest of the passage through the maze silently counting heads, trying to figure out who was already gone. The lantern on the abandoned ship tracked their passage, rotating, following.
They cleared the maze at dawn and found the island. It had no name on any chart. It appeared as a smudge, a fog stain, a mistake in the ink. But it was real. Black rock, red earth, one enormous tree at its peak, leafless, struck by lightning so many times it had turned to glass. And on its shore, a longboat. Not theirs, Fenn's. The Navy was already here. That's when Maren turned to confront Caine and found Drum instead, standing at the railing with the combined map in his hand. Both halves, her half, Caine's half, together. "How long?" she said. Drum didn't look away. "Since skull-etched, I copied your half the night you first showed me." 7 years. 7 years! And he had been feeding their route to Fenn. Not for money, for immunity, for a pardon, for a name restored, for the brother Drum had lost to a pirate's noose. Maren said nothing. She just looked at him, and the look she gave him was something Drum had never seen from her before. Not anger, grief. Then Caine shot Drum in the shoulder and took the map for himself, and ran for the island.
Maren Voss had survived a ship fire, a naval blockade, 3 poisoning attempts, and 1 very memorable duel on a spinning watermill. She had never, not once, lost a race she'd decided to win. She hit the island shore before Caine reached the tree line, took a different route, steeper, crumbling black rock that cut her palms and cost her a boot. She didn't care. She could hear Caine below her crashing through the red brush, and beyond the ridge the faint sound of soldiers, Fenn's men, already moving toward the peak. 3 parties, 1 treasure. She climbed like the mountain owed her something, and somewhere in the middle of that climb, breathless, bleeding, furious, she realized she wasn't climbing for the gold, not anymore. She was climbing because Drum had looked her in the eye and still chosen to betray her, and that, she decided, was something the universe needed to answer for. She reached the glass tree first. At its roots, the ground was warm, alive warm, like a sleeping animal. She pressed her hand into the earth, and below, something pressed back. The entrance was not a door. It was a scar in the red rock at the tree's base, just wide enough for 1 person at a time, as if it had been designed for exactly this moment. The gold was not in chests, it was in a chamber, vast, round, lit by no torch, and it glowed. Not the reflected gleam of metal catching light, it glowed from within, like something warm and breathing. Coins stacked to the ceiling, bars arranged in perfect lines, and at the center, a single plinth. An idol, half melted, half intact, a god caught mid-dissolution, mouth open, eyes gold. Maren stood at the entrance. Caine was already inside, had already picked up a coin. And then she understood the parrot's prophecy in an entirely new way. 4 of you will reach the gold. Drum was on the ship. Isola was on the ship. She and Caine had entered. That was 2. She looked behind her. Fenn's soldiers had not yet arrived. 4 of you. So who was already inside? Caine dropped the coin. "It's not alone," he said, and his voice had no swagger left in it at all. It's a theory. It's always been a theory. But the scholars who studied the accounts of pirates who encountered the Oro Maldito noticed something no one had looked for. Every one of them, in their last days, described the same thing. Not nightmares, not hallucinations, clarity. They saw with terrible precision every person they'd wronged, every choice that led them here. Not as punishment, as a record, a ledger. The gold didn't curse people, It remembered them, because it had been made from gods, and gods, the island's original people believed, do not die. They change form. 100 broken idols hadn't ceased to exist. They had dissolved into the metal, into the currency of human greed. And now, every coin carried the weight of divinity, and divinity, they believed, does not forgive the careless. It witnesses. In the vault, Maren looked at the glowing gold and understood. She wasn't afraid of losing it. She was afraid of being seen by it. And it was already looking. It had always been looking. The idol opened its mouth wider, and in its open throat, light.
Fenn arrived with 6 soldiers and immediately understood she'd made a profound miscalculation. The vault was not a prize, it was a trial. Her men touched the gold and began whispering names, apologies, confessions until she ordered them back. She looked at Maren. Maren looked at Caine, who was on his knees in the center of the chamber, holding his original coin with both hands, shaking. I came back to return it. The first time I was here, I ran. I took 1 coin and I ran, and it never left me. Not one day. 7 years of Caine's confidence, his silk and his smiles, all of it. Just a man running from a memory he couldn't leave behind. Maren knelt beside him, and here is what the history of piracy almost never records. 2 rivals choosing, together, not to take what they came for. She placed both halves of the map on the plinth. Caine placed the coin. The idol's mouth closed. The light went gold warm, then slowly dim. Fenn's men stopped whispering. The vault was just a cave, just old metal in the dark. 3 of you will leave, the parrot had said. 1 would stay. Caine looked at Maren. I think I was always going to stay. They came down from the island with nothing. No gold, no map. Commander Fenn stood on the beach and looked at Maren for a long time. Then, inexplicably, uncharacteristically, in a move that would puzzle naval historians for generations, she let her go. Maybe Fenn had touched a coin too. Maybe she had her own ledger she didn't want read aloud. Some things stay between a woman and whatever she prays to in the dark. Drum survived. His shoulder healed badly. He'd never raise a sword the same way again. He and Maren didn't speak for 3 months, and then, one morning she left a bottle of rum outside his cabin door with no note. He understood. They understood. Some betrayals are just old wounds wearing new names. Isola retired to a cliff cottage in the Azores and never mentioned the voyage. Theorem the parrot outlived her by 11 years and never spoke again. And the gold? The coral maze sealed itself in the storms of that following winter. The sailors who tried to navigate it found only open water. The island was gone from every chart, as if it had always been a rumor. The thing about pirates, the thing they never tell, is that sometimes the bravest thing on the sea is to leave the treasure exactly where you found it and sail home with nothing but the compass pointing back to who you were.